The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Paid Search 201, which is being presented by our Paid Search team lead, Stephen Bauer. My name is Martha Herdendorf, and I am the marketing coordinator here at Top Floor. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that there will be a dedicated time at the end of today's webinar for questions. So if you do think of something during the presentation, please feel free to submit through the questions control panel. You may send your questions in at any time during the presentation, and we will collect and address them during the Q&A session at the end. And with that, I will now turn things over to Stephen.
Thank you, Martha, and good afternoon to all of the attendees. I'm excited to be here and to share with you some ideas about managing or launching your paid search program. Yes, this is me, not what I look like today, but close enough. I am the paid search team lead here at Top Floor, and I am also a Google certified professional. We're going to talk today about launching your AdWords program, and we're going to go through 4 basic steps that are going to help you set up your account for success and lead you on a path of great success through AdWords. We're going to talk about planning your account. We're going to talk about how to structure your account. We're going to review major settings within the AdWords console, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you need to manage for your account right after you launch your campaign. So let's move forward and let's start talking about planning. I want to also reiterate what something Martha said earlier, is that I encourage you all, if you have any questions, please write them in the little chat box, and we will be more than happy to address them when we get to the end here. So, first thing that you should be doing anytime that you are starting to build a paid search campaign is to make sure that Google Analytics is installed on your website and that you have goals for your website. Whether those goals be a form completion, whether they be, if your e-commerce site, your shopping cart, there's all kinds of different things. Phone calls can be measured, certain amount of time on site, certain number of pages being viewed, but you should have some goals set up because that's the only way that you're going to be able to measure the success of your analytics account or your AdWords account. One of the settings within analytics is to enable remarketing. I would make sure that that is enabled from the get-go so that you can build audiences. And then once those audiences reach a certain size, you can begin remarketing to them. And we're going to talk a little bit about remarketing today as well. And then it's always a good idea to connect to Search Console. Some of us may know this better as Webmaster Tools. It allows the 3 of them talking together. You're going to get a lot more information and a lot more accurate information about the performance of your account. As well as additional things that you should be linking to. Every website should have a Google My Business page. Google My Business will enable your business to be found on Google Maps. They also will show up in the search results in the right-hand column with pertinent information that you have included there, and you want to make sure that your AdWords account and your Google My Business account are linked. It's going to be very helpful when you start setting up ad extensions to have those 2 connected, especially if you have brick and mortar stores or an office that you want people to be able to find you. And again, Google Analytics, Search Console, everybody should be connected to YouTube. You should have a YouTube account. YouTube is the #2 search engine, and it's really important to be connected to that. Most companies have lots of video assets, and this is one way to manage those assets and make them accessible to your AdWords account. If you are an e-commerce site, you should have Merchant Center connected to your AdWords account. It will allow you to do product listing ads or PLAs and help improve your sales and conversions for your e-commerce site through Google Shopping. So one of the questions that we get a lot here is, how do we go about setting up goals? And basically what it is, you need to have a value. What it boils down to is, what are you willing to pay, especially in a lead generation situation, what are you willing to pay to acquire a new customer? Part of that depends on what is the value of your product or services. The more expensive your product or service is, the more you probably are willing to pay. On the other hand, if you're selling like CPG type products, so things that people buy like on a monthly basis or 6-month basis, those items are relatively inexpensive, but then you can start looking at, okay, my average customer, let's say, spends $50 a month, but over the course of a year, they're going to spend $600. In the course of 10 years, they're going to spend $6,000, and the average lifetime of my client is 6 years. So that's $6,000. I may be willing to spend a little bit more upfront to acquire a new customer that I know in the long run is going to bring me $6,000 of gross revenue. So those are things that you as a marketer with your team back in your company or with your client need to make some decisions about, because it's going to help you be more effective as a paid search marketer, because now you're going to have some very specific goals that you are working towards, rather than these sort of ambiguous, we just want more conversions, we want more leads, we want more of this, but without telling you what that more is. So setting up a goal is pretty easy. They're set up in analytics. So here, the best way to do this, generally speaking, is through a custom. There are other options you could do specifically for revenue, for acquisition, for inquiry, or for engagement. These are preset. You don't have a lot of flexibility with them. That's why I generally recommend spending a little extra time and do a custom goal. You will name your goal and make it a very simple name that tells it, and very descriptive of what the goal is. Form completion, lead generation, contact us form, request for quote, calls from ads, calls from mobile, shopping cart abandonment, any of those types of things. And you will then generally select a destination, because anytime you have a form, hopefully you have a specific landing page that people are directed to, as opposed to a pop-up that's impossible to track. If you have them going to a specific page that says thank you on it, and then also redirects them back to the site, you're going to be able to have a much more accurate account of the number of people who have completed your forms or completed the particular conversion event that you were looking forward to. Then the last step with this is that you want to tell them what that destination URL is. You want to give it some sort of value. Usually just a form is like around $25 or maybe $50, depending on how much it is. Funnels are generally reserved for for someone with a merchant or e-commerce, where you have a multiple-step shopping cart that people need to go through, and you want to determine which page people are dropping off on, so that you can figure out how to correct that so you get more people through the funnel. And then there's always an opportunity to verify this goal, especially if your site has been live for a while. So in terms of planning, it's a lot about connecting your Google AdWords account to other Google properties, as well as making sure that you have goals set up in Google Analytics, which are automatically then transferred into AdWords. We're going to move on to structure. When you create a campaign, the first thing that you're going to see is you're going to see a box similar to this, and you're going to have a series of options here. I strongly recommend never, and that's all in capitals, use the search network with display select. You are going to be combining Google AdWords with Google Display Network, and it's going to be very hard to get some really good, strong data to evaluate the success of your accounts. If you're doing paid search, search network. If you're doing banner ads or remarketing, it's display network only. If you're doing e-commerce and you have a merchant feed, it's shopping. This is where your PLAs are coming from. And then if you're doing specifically remarketing through video or other types of video marketing, I would set up a video-specific campaign for that. The last one here is if you're doing mobile app downloads, again, set up a campaign specifically for that, and you're going to find that you're going to be able to keep your channels segmented and be able to understand the performance of each of those different segments. We're going to talk about search right now. Generally speaking, these are the types of campaigns that you want to set up. Campaigns generally should follow the navigation of your, or the main navigation of your website. So there should be a campaign just for brand keywords. If you are selling products from other brands, so for example, if you're Home Depot and you're selling Milwaukee's tools or DeKalb tools or DeWalt tools, or you're selling Kohler plumbing fixtures, you can then separate those out into separate campaigns as well, or into one general campaign by vendor. You should separate your campaigns out by products. Either depending on the size of your budget, you could put them all in one campaign, or if you have a fairly significant budget, you may want to break them out by types or whatever. Again, break your services out, and then maybe one dealing with location. The important thing to remember is that your budgets are set up at a campaign level. So the smaller your budgets are, the fewer campaigns you probably want, because you don't want to spread your campaign budget too thinly. And we'll talk a little bit about budgets in a moment. So here's a typical structure. You have campaigns. They each have their own major theme, so to speak, and then you have ad groups underneath that. So if you're talking about DeWalt tools, DeWalt tools has drills, they have saws, they have miter saws, they have a wide range of different tools, and you'll want to break those down so that in one ad group you're going to talk about the miter saws, and another you're going to talk about drills, and you may talk about hand saws, you may talk about what other kind of tools they have. It's easier to get keywords or develop keywords, and it's also much easier to write ads. If everything in your ad group is around saws, it's easier to write an ad just about saws, and you're going to capture more people that way. Ad groups then are broken down into two parts. Generally speaking, you want to start with at least 10 to 15 keywords. You should never let your ad groups get more than 50 keywords at the most. If you're approaching 50, it's time to look at your keywords and either get rid of the ones that aren't producing, or to break them down into smaller ad groups. Text ads, with now the expanded text ads, Google is recommending a minimum of 3 text ads in every single ad group, which I think is a good idea. We have had some great success with expanded text ads, and I find it easier to do A/B testing. We'll talk about specifically the structure of a text ad in just in the next slide here. So each time you move down the list of the structure of a campaign, it's going to become more discrete, it's going to become tighter themed, and it's going to be easier to work with. So expanded text ads are the first major change in Google in years. And this has been a great boon for advertisers. I hope many of you have switched all your ads over, and I hope that you're seeing some great results. Instead of having one headline of 25 characters, we now have 2 headlines of 30 characters each. One of the things that I've done semi-informally is testing my company name on the first headline versus the second headline and vice versa. And anecdotally, I have found from all my non-brand campaigns that having my company name on my second headline tends to give me a higher click-through rate and a stronger conversion rate. Because what happens is that on the first headline, they are looking for the product that they're searching for as opposed to the company name. The description now, instead of being 2 lines of 35 characters each, is now 1 line of 80 characters. And again, you can now write actual sentences that have better grammar, allow you to use grammar in a better way that actually makes sentences that make sense. I'm going to skip to the final URL, which is the landing page. Google will automatically extract the display URL from that, and then you're allowed to add a path, 2 paths, to the end of that display URL. Those paths could be 15 characters each. They're no relation to a real URL, but they're a great way to explain what's going on. So for going back to our DeWalt drills, we could put in a path that goes, 16 horsepower drill and 24 horsepower drill. So maybe those are our 2 most common drills that we sell a lot of. People will know right away from looking at that ad that we carry 16 horsepower and 24 horsepower. And as I'm thinking about that, that probably doesn't make any sense, but you know what I'm talking about there. The last part of the ad group are keywords. Keywords, you want 10 to 15. You want them to start out with. You want them to be closely tied together in terms of purpose and products. You have 4 different options, excuse me, in which to type your keywords. So broad match, the only time I would recommend using broad match is if you have a single word keyword. And you shouldn't be using those much because they're going to be very broad keywords. They're going to bring a lot of unqualified traffic to your website. For example, the word golf. Depending on who you are and probably a little bit of gender bias here, you may think about the golf car by Volkswagen. You may think if you're a golfer, you're going to think about the sport golf. You may think about golf clubs or anything around golf. And you don't know exactly what that keyword is about. So why bid on a keyword that is going to be very ambiguous and going to be very hard to measure or get any kind of ROI out of it? Generally, you want to use 2 to 3 or 4 keywords within your phrase. If you like the broader approach to your keywords, modified broad match is the best way to go. Modified broad match is going to allow you a certain amount of flexibility in bringing in a wide range of people. You put a plus sign in front of 1, 2, or 3 of the words. Never use more than 3 plus signs with a modified broad match. And what that means is somewhere in those queries that the customer clicks on is that those keywords that have plus signs in front of them must be in their query. So that gives you a little bit of confidence that you're getting some people who are at least searching for something related to what you're advertising. So if I have red kids shoes and I put plus signs in front of kids and shoes, I know that I'm going to be at least getting people who are looking for kids shoes or children's shoes or something similar to that Google decides is a close approximation to what they're looking for. Now, if I want to make sure that I'm only getting people who are searching for red kids shoes, is I will put quotes around that, and that means that it's phrase matched. And those 3 words must appear in every single query. You can put it, they can have anything before that, like Keds or Nike or Puma, and anything after that, like, for gym class, for football, for basketball, for tennis. As long as red kids shoes is part of the query, my ad will be displayed. And then the last one is exact, and that means if I type in if I have red kids shoes and I have it in square brackets, the only only time that my keyword will match is someone who types in exactly red kids shoes. I hope that was all clear. It's hard. I could do this much better on a whiteboard, and unfortunately, with our situation right here, I can't do it with the whiteboard because you won't see me. So, then we talked about the campaign structure. Now we're going to talk about the settings for the campaigns. One of the first things that you will want to do is when you set up your campaign is after you've selected the type of campaign is you want to make sure 95% of the time that you are allowing yourself to use all features. All features gives you a just far more expansive, much more control over the campaign of where it's displayed, how it's displayed, and who it's displayed to. If you use standard, you're not going to have that control, and your campaign may not perform as well. So all features. Now, there are exceptions. If you are trying specifically to get people to download a mobile app, you'll want to use the mobile app engagement. Dynamic search ads, which are really great, especially if you have a niche product or service, and it's hard to come up with unique keywords just for your particular vertical. Dynamic search ads are a way to have Google crawl your site much in the way that they would do for an SEO or organic work, and then drive the people who are searching for that information to your website. We'll talk more about dynamic search ads in our next paid search 301, which will be happening on June 15th, and I'll talk more about that later. The third one that you have an option for is call only. This is great, particularly if you have not been able to get your website to be mobile friendly or responsive. You could do a call only campaign on mobile phones that will allow people to call your business directly from their phone, from their ad, and they never have to see your website. The next thing that you want to pay particular attention to is your location. So I have a business in Milwaukee. I cater to Milwaukee people. So I could set up my ads campaigns to just show to people in Milwaukee. Now, when I start looking at this map here, I notice that that's pretty restrictive, and you know what? I probably have people that are in West Allis or in Wauwatosa or maybe up in Thiensville or some of the other burbs that are in Milwaukee and would probably enjoy my shop. So one of the things that I could do is something called radius targeting. So I'm going to do a radius targeting of people, you know, anywhere from 10, 15, or 20 miles from the city center of Milwaukee or from my particular location. And that way I get a much broader scope of people to choose from and drive potential clients to either my website or to my physical location. Now, if I find that that isn't big enough, and if I go much bigger than that, you know, I'm going to end up probably pulling in people from Illinois or people from Door County, which is really probably too far. So one of the things that I could do is I could specifically say I want these counties. So in the immediate Milwaukee metro area, most people think about these counties that are listed there. And so that I'm going to test my knowledge here and see if I get this right. Kenosha, Racine, Waukesha County, Milwaukee County, and I think it's Ozaukee. I think. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's the top one in blue. Now, I want to make sure that people in Illinois don't see my ads because I really don't cater to Illinois people. So I could negative out or exclude the entire state of Illinois. My ad should not display to people in Illinois. Now I could start looking at other counties that are, you know, just a little bit too far away, you know, like Rock County and Wellsworth and Jefferson and a few of these other ones up here. And so that it's a way for me to control my spend and to control who my ads are being displayed to. I hope that all makes sense. One last thing that you want to do if you do any kind of targeting is that you want to use these advanced options that, again, are only available if you choose all features. And the smart thing to do is that you only want to target to people in your targeted location, not people in searching for or who show interest in my target location. Because again, you're going to get a lot of unqualified traffic that either because of distance or other limitations are not going to be able to avail themselves of your services. The other part of that is exclude the people. You want to exclude people in or searching for or who show interest in your excluded location. Because if they're looking for anything but you, why show your ads to them? You're just wasting impressions. I have done this with a number of clients over the years, and it has significantly freed up budget and allowed me to be more effective in the use of budgets that I've had for my clients. The other thing that you want to do that's important is choose what network. Most people will limit their display to just the Google search network. Generally speaking, that's not a good idea. I would always include search partners unless I can determine that those search partners are just spending budget and not doing any kind of return for the budget that I spent. But always start out with as broad of an audience base as possible, because it will allow you then to trim it down, and it's a lot easier to trim down than it is to grow. So something that we talked about in the first webinar was the fact of the growth of mobile, where over 50% of all searches within the United States are being done on a mobile phone. You can now select where you want your ads to show more. If you have a mobile-friendly, responsive design website that works well on a mobile phone, you should be sending most of your traffic to a mobile phone. Just plain and simple, regardless of whether you're B2C or B2B or any other type of niche market. People are using their phones more and more to find the information that they want. The other thing that you'll want to do is probably up your bids on mobile phones only. As little as 10%, and depending on the campaign, you could go as high as 100%. This adjustment can be done on a campaign level. So I always suggest at least 10%. If you're using brand keywords, I would always suggest at least 50 to 75%, if not the full 100%. You want to make sure that your ads are at the top of the page and you're making full use of all the options that are available to you through Google AdWords, and you could dominate the entire screen. Now, if you find that tablets are not working very well, or you want to also cut back the number of computers, laptops, desktops that you're using, you can also do decrease by. So tablets sometimes, depending on the product, you could basically eliminate your ads showing up on tablets. Generally speaking, you could go 25 to all the way to 100% decrease and just save you money, because a lot of times the ads that are displayed there aren't worth the time it takes to display them. In the United States, generally speaking, you're going to make sure that all your ads are displayed in English. Now, we are becoming a more pluralistic society with lots of different languages that are being spoken, but if your website is only available in English, you're going to probably only want to show to people who can read and write English. If you have a site that is multilingual, that allows people to switch between German, French, Spanish, any one of a number of other languages or variations on Chinese or Hindu or whatever, Hindi, you may want to also include these other languages in here so that your ad can just, again, the more diverse your site is and your product is, the more diverse you want your audience or potential audience to be. Here's the important part, is that you need to set a budget. So you have, either through your company or from your client, you have a predetermined amount of what you can spend each day. Generally, you take that amount and you divide it by 30, and that will give you what your total budget is for the entire account. So if you have, I'm going to do this in big numbers. So if I have $10,000 of monthly budget, if I divide that by 30, that's $300 a day that I can spend. Now, if I have 10 campaigns, I could just, split it up by $30 for each campaign. That's not going to work, because some campaigns are going to require more money than others. Generally, what you want to do is you want to look at the most expensive keyword in the account, in that ad group or that campaign, multiply it by at least 10, recommended 20. So let's say my most expensive keyword is $5. I should probably budget at least $50. 5 times 10 is 50. Yes, $50 a day so that I can get at least 10 clicks a day out of that campaign. So let me repeat that again. I look at my keywords and I look at my most expensive keyword and I multiply that times at least 10, and that should give me what my daily budget should be for that campaign. That's in a perfect world. We always don't have the budgets to do that, but that's sort of a guideline that I've been told over the years by Google is a good recommendation, and I try to do it as much as possible. You want your most expensive keywords to have the most budget so that they can drive the most traffic and also convert the most. The other thing that you want to do that's on here is your delivery method. There's lots of options here. To me, the only one that really makes sense is the standard optimization, where Google, if you have $50 a day and you want your ads showing from midnight to midnight, you want Google to try to make that $50 work all day long. And so they're going to, sort of pace your ads out so that most of them will be shown during peak business hours or peak searching hours. And then as you get further away from those, their ads will be showing less. And this is the best way to do that. Now, another way to help facilitate that is by campaign, you can set an ad schedule. I can tell it what days of the week I want my ads to be shown. I can tell them what day or what time of day they can be shown, and then I can also make bid adjustments based off of those days and those times. Generally speaking, you put up a website that's available 24/7. Your ads should be showing 24/7. We have some clients, and I've worked with other clients in the past, that only have their ads showing when their business is open. Generally, I don't think it's a good idea. So I usually start out with setting the same time parameters for every day of the week. So I know, generally speaking, from 12 to 5 or midnight to 5 or 6 a.m. are generally a lot of traffic that my traffic's low. What traffic I usually get is tire kickers or people just having fun on the web. That's one time period that I set up. And then I set from either 5 or 6 till noon, and then from noon until 5 or 6, depending on the business day of my clients, and then from 6 until 10, and then from 10 until midnight. That's generally how I start out, and then within 30 days, I'm going to be able to see in those different time segments what kind of audiences I'm getting, what kind of traffic I'm getting, what kind of conversions I'm getting. Do my conversions cost more or less during my peak times? And then I can start making bid adjustments. I can set them to Monday to Friday. I can set a different set of time and bid adjustments on Monday than I can on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. I'm going to know what days of the week are my best days in terms of performance. I will also know which days are the best day for traffic versus conversions, or conversions versus traffic, and it will also give me some sort of idea of what my sales cycle is. So if I get a lot of traffic on Monday, but I don't see any really conversions until Wednesday or Thursday, I know that there's at least a 3 or 4 day cycle in that process for people to make decisions. This can also affect my ads, when I run my ads, when I run my specials, and all kinds of other things. It's very, very useful. Another one of the settings that you want to look at for your ads is how you want Google to optimize. When you start a new campaign or a new ad group, Google will automatically rotate your ads evenly. Generally, within the first 3 or 4 days, they're going to be able to tell you which of those ads you are running is going to be the better ad. And then they're going to start favoring that ad and showing that ad more in the search results. You want Google to optimize for clicks. Those that are going to promote traffic to your website, especially if you think you have a really well-designed site that has a good, strong funnel that's going to drive people to where they need to go so that they can convert. The other option that you have is to optimize for conversions. Google has, tons of algorithms. Google lives on algorithms. And they are able to determine most of the time if a person is going to be more likely to convert or not. And you may want to set this up as the way to show your ad rotations. As you change your ads, Google will go back to an even rotation for anywhere from 24 to 72 hours until it determines which of those new ads, if they're going to be able to outperform the old ads. Very seldom do I recommend rotate evenly. If you are, decide to go a whole new route with ads and change up the voices and everything else that you're using, you may want to set them up to rotate, but I would never let them rotate for a full 90 days. I would only probably let them rotate for anywhere from 30 to 45 days so that I can really understand what the performance is. Then, we talked a little bit about remarketing ads the last time, and remarketing ads have this sort of bad rap as being stalker ads or creepy ads. One of the ways that you can do to be discreet about your remarketing ads is to limit the number of viewable impressions are shown to each person searching on the web. Generally speaking, I'd limit those impressions per week per ad group to 12. I just find that that works well. I still get enough traffic. I still get the conversions that I need. And it doesn't give your clients, doesn't creep out your clients. Now, there are ways that you may find that 12 isn't enough. Maybe you need to go to 15. Maybe 12 is too many. You pull it back to 8. Maybe you want to do 3 or 4 a day. But generally speaking, I would start out with about 12 viewable impressions per week per ad group, and then make adjustments accordingly depending on your clients and how they respond to the number of ads that they're getting shown on a daily or weekly basis. So we're now all ready to launch our campaign. There are some key performance indicators that we need to be aware of, or KPIs. So the very basic ones have to do with clicks, the number of times people click on an ad, as opposed to impressions, which is the number of times people see your ad. You do a search, you get displayed, a series of ads in the search results. Those are all called impressions. You click on one of them and you go to the website. You can figure out your click-through rate by dividing clicks by impressions by clicks into impressions. Yes, clicks by impressions. And that will give you your click-through rate. Generally speaking, across all verticals, if you've got a 1% click-through rate, you're doing well. Now, you can start breaking that down. If you're doing just brand campaigns, you probably want at least a 5% or more click-through rate, because that is a recognizable commodity that people know and they should be clicking through. I've had clients sometimes have high as 20 to 30% click-through rates. Because of the nature of their business and their brand recognition and just who they are, they get really strong click-through rates. The next thing that we want to look at is the spend. So how much am I spending, either on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis? If I take that spend and divide it by the number of clicks, I'm going to be able to get the average CPC. Average CPC varies wildly depending on your vertical, depending on the cost of your product. The less expensive your product or service is, the less you're going to need to pay on an average cost per click. The more expensive your product or service is, the more higher your cost per click is. So real estate agents can pay anywhere from $25 to $100 per click, because all they need to do basically is sell one house and they've got their advertising budget paid for an entire year. So they're willing to spend more money. Now it also depends on what kind of homes you're selling to. If you're mainly selling in the $1 million market, you're going to be it's going to cost you a lot more to get that traffic to your website. The last thing, or the next thing that we want to look at are the number of conversions. So what conversion events did they complete? Did they fill out a form? Did they make a phone call? Did they buy something off of my website? So conversions divided by clicks will give me my conversion rate. Again, conversion rates will vary wildly depending on your product and depending on the expense. Inexpensive products sell quicker and faster on the web than things that are more expensive. We also want to look at the average cost per conversion. So this is where having that value set up in Google Analytics that we talked about at the very beginning is going to be very helpful, because you want to make sure that you're not paying more than what it's worth for you to acquire a new customer. So if your value is $25 to get a bunch of people to fill out a form and it's costing you only $12 to get them to fill out the form, you're doing really, really well. And then you also want to look at average position. So a little over a year ago, Google removed all the listings from the right-hand side. That reduced the number of paid search listings in the search results by 8 right off the bat. Most people were probably really happy to be in position 1 or 2 on the right-hand rail, now being forced to the left-hand above the organic listings. Those cost more. You probably don't want to be in position 1 and 2 on the left-hand prime real estate spot unless there's only 2 of you up there. Generally speaking, you want to do some testing to see if, my costs have gone up, well, my conversions have gone down, so you want to lower your bids so that you maybe are in position 3, or maybe if there's enough room to do position 4, and you may find that you'll end up doing better. That's how average position is going to be really helpful. The first month after you launch your campaign, I would not worry about any of these metrics. Just watch them, and at the end of 30 days, you have a baseline from which you then can start optimizing and start improving on. Google Analytics is also part of that first month, as well as ongoing. You want to look at the number of users. That's the number of that's the number of people who have come to your site over the course of the last 30 days. Sessions is a unique number because a person may come to your site. I think I just confused myself. I'm going to shut up because I'm going to confuse myself even more. So users and sessions. What is unique, what is not? We'll leave it at that. You also want to look at the number of page views. Excuse me. So when person A comes to your site, how many pages did they look at? We want them to look at more pages. And the more pages that we look at, the more engaged they're going to be. The more engaged they're going to be, the more likely they are to convert. So you also want to set some basic KPIs so that you can see how that goes from month to month. And then when you get a full year's worth of data, you can start looking at that year over year. When you start managing your keywords, one of the things that is, especially in the beginning, is a regular task is to be adjusting your bids. Google AdWords has several filters to allow you to look at your keywords. You want to look at, and those are below first page bid, keywords that are low search volume, and keywords that are low quality score. Keywords that are below the first page bid means that you're showing up on the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth page. And we know pretty much nobody goes beyond the first page, let alone scroll to the bottom of the first page. You want to make sure that your bid matches or exceeds that below or that first page bid that you can get in the Google UI. If your keywords have low search volume, Google has determined that nobody or very few people search on that keyword ever, and it's probably just a good idea to pause it because you're never going to get any traffic. It's just taking up space in your account. Low quality score, anything below position quality score of 3 is probably not going to work very well. Now, with that being said, some of my best keywords in terms of conversions have been 3s. And so you just have to play that on a keyword by keyword basis. And you can see here at the bottom, when you're going into the UI and the filter, you'll see these are the different things that you can check and uncheck and be able to look at on a regular basis. Some things that you have to be concerned about with your keywords is your max CPC. You want to make sure that you are bidding high enough to get displayed, but not so high that you're just paying for position with no return. You also want to look at match type. Generally, if you start out with modified broad match, you may eventually want to move some of your keywords to phrase match, and maybe and an occasional keyword you want to move to exact because that's the phrase that really knocks it out of the park for you. Also, you want to look at negative keywords. So if I'm selling golf cars, I may want to put in a bunch of negative keywords about golf clubs and that type of thing, so that anybody who's looking for a golf club, whether that be the kind that you swing or the kind that you go to, I'm not wasting money doing that as well, and it'll also help me with match types. We talked a little bit about this before when we mentioned expanded text ads and how great and wonderful they are. I now can start testing headlines and what headline works best in what position. I can also test which combination of headlines and descriptions work. All of these things should be carefully planned out and carefully thought about as you're building your AdWords text ads, so that you can be on top of it and monitoring this on a regular basis so that you can get the best combination of headlines and descriptions to drive the right kind of people to your website. Making sure all the time that you're including a strong call to action, and where does that strong call to action go? Does it go in a headline? Does it go in the description? Depending on your vertical, that can make a big difference. So, we made it through. We're going to just briefly run through the 4 steps. You want to spend a lot of time planning. The more you plan, the better the execution is going to be. Take care to carefully structure your accounts. Make sure that you are using the right type of account for your particular needs in terms of search, in terms of display and video. You want to make sure that you take time to get all those settings correct and be aware of them and able to adjust them as needed. And then you want to make sure that you have some clear KPIs set up so that you can measure the performance within the first 30 days and establish some benchmarks. Now, before we go to questions, I would like to remind you that on Tuesday, May 23rd, which is a week from next Tuesday, one of my coworkers, Adam Bittner, is going to be doing the second in his series of webinars on email marketing. If you joined him on the first one, you'll definitely want to make sure that you join him on the second one, and lots of good information. So with that, let's see what kind of questions we have.
We'll give you guys a couple minutes. If you have any questions, please submit them through the control panel. We're not seeing anything come through yet.
And if you think of a question later, you can always send it to us in email and we'll get back to you within 24 hours.
Yeah.
So I guess we did a good job of explaining today, or either that or you all fell asleep. I'm hoping it's the former, not the latter. I would like to thank...
Actually, hold on.
Oops.
There's some stuff coming in. Hold on 1 second here.
Yeah. If I can find my glasses. Oh. Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that being said, I will be sending out a follow-up email to all of you, hopefully this afternoon, with a link to the presentation. And like Stephen mentioned earlier, if you do have questions that you think of after the fact, please feel free to reach out and we would be happy to answer anything that you think of. We hope you enjoyed the webinar today and have a great afternoon.